Okay, great. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This will be the second in our series of sessions on upgrading from Primo to Primo V. In today's session, we will discuss Primo VE's search configuration, emphasizing on search scopes, search profiles, and search slots. This session will begin with an overview of the hierarchy and terminology of the configuration structure in Primo VE in comparison to the structure you are most likely familiar with in Primo Backoffice. There will be a short review of the third-party indexes, which are available for search via Primo VE in addition to your local ALMA repository, imported external data sources, and CDI. We will then focus on each of the main entities in the structure of Primo VE's search configuration: scopes, profiles, and slots. You are welcome to submit questions related to this session in the Q&A box, and I will try to address as many of them as possible. Finally, we will review several questions that have been pre-submitted. So let's get going. The hierarchy and flow when configuring search scopes in Primo VE is different than in Classic Primo. In Primo Backoffice, you define scope values and their criteria. Records are linked to scope values using Primo normalization rules on the search section of the PNX records. Scope values are grouped to form a search scope, and search scopes are grouped to form a search tab. In Primo VE, you define scopes and their criteria. Scopes are defined by setting conditions and that link them to groups of records. Scopes are grouped to form a search profile, and search profiles are grouped to form a search slot. Needless to say, a search profile can consist of one single scope, and a search slot can consist of a single profile. In the top right corner of this slide, there is a general and very basic description of search configuration in Primo VE. Below this diagram is a more detailed demonstration of how one's Primo VE search configuration could be set up. In addition to defining your own scopes, profiles, and slots, Primo VE comes with out-of-the-box search profiles, which can be used as is or customized to meet your preference. There's a library catalog profile for searching all your local institutional repository, including external data sources imported into Primo VE. There's an articles profile for searching in CDI, the Libris Central Discovery Index, which is replacing PCI, Primo Central. There's an everything profile for searching in both your local repository and CDI, and the course reserves profile for searching records linked to active courses in ALMA. In addition to your institutional repository and CDI, you can recreate remote third-party indexes, which you have configured in Primo Backoffice, and of course, set up new remote indexes. To see which third-party indexes are currently configured in Primo Backoffice, go to the Deep Search Plugins mapping table. Your parameters of each of these third-party indexes can be found in the Deep Search Plugin Parameters mapping table. Note that you can set up more than one index of each type of index. For example, you can configure several EBSCO indexes, each searching a different set of EbscoHost databases. An EBSCO index is for searching EBScoHost databases via API. This plugin is not to be confused with EBSCO's content collections activated in your CDI account and represented by electronic collections and portfolios in your ALMA. A WorldCat index is for deep searching OCLC's WorldCat catalog using your unique WorldCat key. A webhook index is for you to enhance your Primo VE search engine to work with different external search engines such as Google. A deep search index is for searching catalogs of other Primo VE institutions that have provided access to your institution's end users. These partner institutions are to be added in the Primo VE Deep Search Configuration mapping table under Discovery Configuration. Here are some facts to be aware of when using an EBSCO scope in a search profile. EbscoHost API does not support the Starts With option for title searches. The API will return all results, not just the titles that start with the search term. EbscoHost API does not support pre-limiting a search by language. When searching in a scope that invokes the EbscoHost API, none of the facets will have record counts. For search slots blending EbscoHost API with local ALMA or CDI scopes, the system will return all relevant facets for non-EBSCO results, but they will not include record counts. Other than the resource type facet, facets that are not supported by the EbscoHost API will not return results from EBSCO. If users select a resource type facet value, the system will return the non-EBSCO results and query EBSCO to return EBSCO records of that facet value. If any other non-supported facet is selected, no EBSCO results will be returned. Because the EbscoHost API results do not include all the facet values, counts, and advanced search options, it is recommended that you have the EbscoHost API scope in a separate search profile. Okay, before configuring search scopes, profiles, and slots in Primo VE, you may want to review the existing settings in Primo Backoffice to see how your tabs and scopes are configured. You can also check the front end of the view to see how they are presented to end users. During preparation, it may be helpful to outline the structure of the search profiles and slots that you intend to create for your Primo VE view. Your structure can consist either of a single slot containing multiple profiles, multiple slots with a single profile each, or multiple slots with multiple profiles. Of course, you can have a single slot with a single profile offering all the data that is available to your patrons. Drop-down menus for slots and search profiles will be omitted if they have only a single option. We recommend sticking to the structure you currently have set in your Primo Backoffice Views wizard, as it will simplify the configuration of permalinks redirection from your classic Primo view to your Primo VE view once you go live with Primo VE and the DNS switch is implemented. What I mean by this is if you have a single tab with multiple scopes in your classic Primo, don't set up Primo VE with multiple slots consisting of one profile each. And the same goes for the opposite. Here's how to get started. In your Primo Backoffice Views wizard, find the view you are recreating and navigate to the tab's configuration page. Edit each tab and make a list of the scopes that are currently in use. Then go back to the Search Scopes list page. For each relevant scope on the page, select Edit to see which scope values it includes. You will be configuring the scopes and values as custom local scopes or other indexes at the institution level in Primo VE. If you are not sure exactly which group of records a scope value represents, go to the Scope Values list under Pipe Configuration Wizard in the Primo Backoffice Ongoing Configuration Wizard. Find the relevant scope value code and see how it is mapped to the Search Scope field in the Search section of your View's normalization rules. In some cases, search scope rules can be identified when the scope's code is based on a constant normalization command. This can often be found challenging, and you are always welcome to consult Primo support by submitting a Salesforce case via Support Portal. Let's talk about creating your own local scopes. Scopes are configured at the institution level and are added to search profiles, which can then be used by any or all your Primo VE views. Note that creating a scope does not require recalculation or manual reindexing of the data. In Alma, go to the Search Profiles menu under the Search Configuration section in the Discovery Configuration menu. Select the Custom Local Data Scopes tab and add a custom scope. This scope will limit searches to your local repository based on conditions involving metadata fields or inventory indications. Okay, so this is Alma. We will go to the Discovery Configuration, Search Configuration, Search Profiles. Open the Custom Local Data Scopes. And let's add a new custom scope. Here are the conditions. Metadata fields are the bibliographic level of the records. The available list of inventory-related indication contains availability, physical, digital, electronic, campuses, libraries, locations, collections, courses, and external data sources. You can see in the drop-down list all the available inventory indications that you can use to create your condition. Here's an important point to comment on. You may find scope values in Primo Backoffice that cannot be replicated using metadata or inventory-affiliated conditions. In such situations, you can base conditions on Primo VE local fields that you will configure under Manage Display and Local Fields in the Discovery Configuration section. Let's go to Manage Display and Local Fields under the Display Configuration. We will add a new local field. This local field will have to have the Enable field for search checkbox enabled, and you will have to select a bibliographic field from the drop-down list. Enable the checkbox. And select a bibliographic field from the available drop-down list. If your scope value is based on a bibliographic field that is not in this drop-down list, you can map the bibliographic field to one of your available local 900 bib fields using ALMA normalization rules. This local 900 field can then be selected from the drop-down list here when defining scope conditions. Let's go back to our local custom scope, creating a new scope. Once you have configured local fields, you'll be able to choose from the list of local fields which have the Enable field for search checkbox enabled. Instructions on working with ALMA normalization rules can be found in our ALMA documentation, and you are welcome to contact ALMA support upon any challenge you may encounter during this work. In this slide, you see the list of available bibliographic fields to choose from when creating a local field for your custom scope. You can define between 1 and 3 conditions for each scope. Let's define a condition. Let's define another condition. And notice there is the Boolean logic operator. Now, if you use more than one condition for a local scope, you will have to define the Boolean relation between the conditions. It is important to point out that when configuring 3 conditions for a scope, precedence is given to the AND operator over the OR operator. Let's demonstrate this. We have condition 1 and condition 2, or condition 3. I'll demonstrate this. If you have configured condition A and condition B or condition C, then the scope will offer records that meet either conditions A and B or records that meet condition C. If you have configured condition A or condition B and condition C, then the scope will offer records that meet either conditions B and C or records that meet condition A. If more than 3 conditions with the OR operators between them are required, simply create additional scopes which can then be grouped in a single search profile. Needless to say, the Boolean logic between scopes in a search profile is OR. In other words, records belonging to any of the scopes will be part of this profile. The next step is to create a search profile or edit an existing profile. Search profiles are configured at the institution level, unlike in Primo Backoffice, where they were configured per view. Creating a search profile does not require recalculation or manual reindexing of the data. Once you create the profile, simply save it and connect it to a view, and you can immediately start using it for search in Primo VE. Note that predefined out-of-the-box search profiles may require opening and saving once in order for them to start returning results in Primo VE. Once the Define a Custom Search Profile page, on the Define a Custom Search Profile page, you'll set the label that will be displayed in your Primo VE view. If your institution has multiple language view interfaces, click on the globe icon to set the translated label. Let's see that. Let's go back to the Search Profiles tab. And we can either edit an existing profile or create a new profile. If you are creating a new search profile, you will define a code for the profile, which can but does not have to be identical to the parallel search scope code used by your classic Primo view. You can also enter an optional internal description for the search profile. You can create or modify the list of scopes included in the search profile. Before you begin creating any search profiles, make sure that you have already created any custom scopes that you intend to include in the search profile. There are pre-existing scopes for you to choose from. Scopes for libraries and campuses, as defined in Alma, a CDI scope, and then an institution scope containing all physical, electronic, and digital inventory that is managed in Alma, in addition to all records which are not managed in Alma but have been loaded from an external data source directly into Primo VE. Note that if you have already added any of the local data scopes, campuses, libraries, or custom local data, you cannot select this library catalog scope. In addition to the pre-existing out-of-the-box scopes, you can select any local custom scope and any third-party index that you have configured. Once you have configured search profiles, you can go ahead and configure search slots for your Primo VE view in the view configuration. The search profile slots page controls the slots, as I mentioned earlier, referred to in Classic Primo as search tabs. You will find the most common slots predefined. These can be used as is or modified, in addition to the option of adding new slots. Use the arrows on the right-hand side of the page to control the order in which the slots display in the drop-down list when using Primo VE's basic search. Let's go to View Configuration. You'll edit the view that you're working on over to the Search Profile slots, and you can either enable, disable, edit, reorder, or add your own new slot. Modifying a slot would be to edit it and select the search profiles that it consists of. The up and down arrows, let's edit a slot. The up and down arrows on the right-hand side control the order in which the profiles will display. In the Define Slot section of the slot, you will set the label that will be displayed in your Primo VE view. If your institution has multiple language view interfaces, click on the globe icon to set the translated label. You can also enter an optional internal description for the search slot, plus a tooltip. If you are creating a new search slot, you will define a code for the slot, which can, but does not have to be, identical to the parallel search tab code in your classic Primo view. You can edit each slot and enable or disable the available search profiles. You can also view the contents of each search profile using the Actions button next to each search profile. Remember that your Primo VE search can offer the end user either a single slot containing multiple profiles, multiple slots with a single profile each, multiple slots with multiple profiles, or a single slot with a single profile. The two first options will result in a single drop-down list in the Primo VE basic search. Configuring multiple slots with multiple profiles each will display two drop-down lists in the search box. Now, we can see that in Primo VE. If I select a slot that consists of more than one profile, we'll get two drop-down lists, one for the slot and one for the profile. It's worth pointing out a difference between Classic Primo and Primo VE when it comes to slots or profiles when using the basic search. If you have configured multiple slots, a fresh search box in Primo VE will not display the slots drop-down list. Once the user begins to type in the search term, the available slots will appear in a drop-down list above the autocomplete suggestions. Once that first search has been executed, the slots drop-down list will appear at the side of the search box as in Classic Primo. Let's see that in Primo VE. As you see, there's no drop-down list for slots or profiles. As I start typing my search term in, I will get the autocomplete, and above it, I will get the list of slots. Once I execute that first search, the drop-down list will appear. Like in Classic Primo, Primo VE offers the option to configure restricted search scopes in order to restrict search of a group of records to specific types of users. Once you've added a new restricted search group under the search configuration section of the Discovery configuration menu, you will save and then re-enter the search group in order to complete its configuration. You can define either one or two restricted search conditions, separated by an OR Boolean operator, after which you can proceed to defining the restriction rules based on IP ranges, user groups, registered users, or on-campus browsing sessions. I'll pause here to address some of the questions that may have come up through the Q&A box. It's a good opportunity to mention the survey sent out in advance that allows you to pre-submit questions, which we can then address during the coming sessions. I've also prepared some pre-submitted questions, but I'd like to start with questions from our live participants.
We do have a question that's come in. First question is, when configuring slots and scopes in VE, so as long as you mirror your PBO settings, is there any expectation that there will be redirect failures? For example, we were told that with CDI there would be about 10% viability failure of existing permalinks.
Okay, so failure concerning search tabs and search scopes being translated to search slots and search profiles, there shouldn't be any failure. What can happen is facet value codes that exist in your Classic Primo and no longer exist in Primo VE, which will lead to what we'd call like a semi-failure. You won't be able to completely replicate the full search that you saved in Classic Primo.
Okay, a follow-up question to that is more of a clarification, is that when search dropdowns are configured, they are only hidden for the first search after configuration, not for every new search executed by each user. Is that correct?
It's per session. Let's go back to Primo VE. Let me show you. I'm starting a new search with no additional parameters in the address bar. And it appears, and then you'll get the parameters. You'll get the tab code, you'll get the scope code, and the search term. And when you do that again, once again, you'll the drop-down list of slots will disappear. Now, if you have a single slot and multiple profiles, you should see the drop-down list straight away.
Okay, another question that's come in is, I don't see a held by library facet in my GoVE instance. How do I make that appear?
That would have to be troubleshooted. It may be that your search results don't have local, your hit list doesn't have local ALMA data, in which case you won't have any for held by library. This would have to be, you're invited to send this example to Primo support in a Salesforce case. Some questions that we have been asked in the past. Do we need to be Primo certified administrators before upgrading from Primo to Primo VE? The answer is you don't have to be Primo certified in order to initiate your GoVE process. Even if you don't have access to Primo Backoffice, you should be able to set up Primo VE while comparing the view you are working on to your classic Primo front end. And of course, if your institution is entitled to Total Care Service and you have any uncertainty regarding back-office settings which you do not have access to, you're welcome to contact Primo support. It's worth reminding again that the upgrade from Primo to Primo VE is an excellent opportunity to redefine discovery configurations according to your end user's current needs. There is no obligation to replicate the configuration that you may have set up for Classic Primo several years ago. As for the Primo VE certification, your work on Primo VE during the GoVE process and the GoVE documentation will provide you the knowledge, training, and experience you'll need in order to be certified with Primo VE. Nevertheless, we do have the Primo VE administration certification under the training section in Primo documentation, which as a matter of fact comes in French, German, Spanish, Italian, Polish, Korean, Chinese, and English. Here's another question. We have been loading external records to Primo since 2014. Do these records move over to Primo VE as part of the migration, or do they need to be re-imported to Primo VE from the external systems? If those records aren't in ALMA, they won't automatically be searchable in Primo VE. You will copy the pipe details from Primo Backoffice and set up import profiles to initially load those records to Primo VE, in addition to setting an ongoing schedule so that Primo VE is kept up to date with the external source. Our next 2 sessions will focus on importing external data sources to Primo VE. If you currently have any active non-ALMA pipes in Primo Backoffice, I highly recommend attending the next 2 sessions or reviewing the recording, as external data import is often a challenging step in the upgrade from Primo to Primo VE. Okay. We have a local data scope for an external data source that we imported to Primo VE. When we try to add it to the library catalog profile, we get an error message reading, "My entire institution and local data scopes could not be included together in the same search profile." So as I mentioned earlier, external data sources are considered part of your local data once they have been imported to Primo VE. How can we have a search profile containing our ALMA repository, but without any imported data sources? The way to achieve this is by defining a local custom scope using the condition external data source doesn't exist. Let me show you that in ALMA. We'll go over to the Scopes tab under Search Profile in Search Configuration, Custom Local Data Scopes. Let's add a new scope. Hop over to the Scope Conditions and External Data Source doesn't exist. This is it. All records that are not coming from an external data source will be part of this scope. How do I determine whether CDI records, How do I determine whether CDI records with no available full text initially appear in the search results? So going to a search profile that contains a central index scope or when adding such a scope to a search profile, you will see a checkbox that reads Filter by Availability. Enabling this checkbox will hide CDI records with no full text and will display the Expand My Results option above the Facets section after executing a CDI or blended search. Okay, Scott, did any other questions come in meanwhile?
Yeah, we got one, a couple more. With the change to VE dropdowns, is there a difference with screen reader compatibility? Is there a place we can check which screen readers have been tested for VE?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that? Screen?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, with the change to VE dropdowns, is there a difference with screen reader compatibility? Is there a place we can check which screen readers have been tested for VE? This is namely an accessibility question.
Screen readers. Okay, so that's something we'd have to check. So I'd like to ask you to send that question to our GoVE inbox, and we'll check it. We'll respond, and we might add it to one of the next sessions.
Okay, another question that's come in is when was the Primo VE certification training last updated?
That's something I don't know the answer to that. But if you notice anything which isn't up to date, the training certification should be up to date. It's all the basic configuration. If you notice anything that isn't up to date, please draw our attention to it. I personally review documentation and try to maintain and keep it as up to date as possible. But we appreciate if you notice anything to let us know, and we'll update the training certification.
One more. It's more of a comment. Please include accessibility info in printed documentation, not just the video trainings.
Okay, thank you for that comment. We'll take that into consideration. Thank you for tuning in to this second session of GoVE Become an Expert series. I hope you all benefit from the topics we discussed today, and I hope to see you again in the coming GoVE sessions.